Okay, good morning. Welcome to Friday Coffee Meetup. I am Christy Connor, your host. We are so pleased to be with you during Innovate Pasadena's Connect Week. Friday Coffee Meetup is part of the Innovate Pasadena umbrella, and we are so pleased and honored to be part of this week. There are many events that are happening across the city, live and on Zoom. So please be sure and check those out. I've included that information in the chat window if you're on the Zoom meeting, and as well in the LinkedIn Live. Friday Coffee Meetup is the largest active innovation, entrepreneurial, and tech meetup in Los Angeles, California. We are a community that's built on bringing innovation and partnership throughout the Southern California community. Although you are seeing my face right now, there's actually many people behind the scenes who are actually making this happen on a week-to-week basis. And normally I show all of their photos, but today I just wanted to mix it up a little bit. And I wanted to thank 4 of our volunteers who really spend so much time and effort each week to allow us to make this happen for our community. So I would really like to thank Doreen Chen Allen, John Chu, Evan Sang, and Jacqueline Chang. They've been amazing over the last year. Obviously, we've had quite a few ups and downs as we've been navigating this pandemic process, as well as Echo Factory for sponsoring us as well. I also want to thank all of our members. We love you. We're glad that you've stuck with us as we've gone through this process as well. And we're always so pleased to learn from you. Our speaker today, Lorel Scott, is actually a recommendation from one of our other members, Shuling, who really benefited from some of the education that StartupStarter, his company that he works with and is co-founder for, started. So we are also grateful for our members, and we are always looking for interesting speakers. So if you have any, please feel free to reach out to our leadership. I am really looking forward to talking to Lorel today. He is going to be talking about entrepreneurship, the future of business education, online learning, and how that information is also consumed. He's going to be talking about democratizing entrepreneurship, which I think is so important, and how that landscape has shifted during the pandemic and what it looks like post-pandemic as well. He's going to tap into our community. I know one of our previous speakers is leading a course on StartupStarter, so that's really cool. So I'm looking forward to talking about those connections with him. Please welcome Lorel Scott. He is the COO and co-founder and head of global partnerships at StartupStarter. Lorel's going to come on. We're going to watch a short video about StartupStarter, and then today's process will be a little bit different. We're going to have a fireside chat. So we will talk first, and then we will open it up for Q&A. If you're on the Zoom meeting, our Q&A is moderated through the bottom center of the panel. You're able to chat to one another in the chat room, but or in the chat feature, it's unmoderated. So please do put your questions in the Q&A panel. With that, please welcome Lorel. Lorel, if you want to go ahead and hit the video for us.
Hello, my name is Jose Barrera, and I am the co-founder and CEO of StartupStarter.
And I'm Lorel Scott. I am the co-founder and COO of StartupStarter.
StartupStarter is for people that want to start a business but don't know how. StartupStarter is for the individual that dreams of someday owning something but doesn't have the courage because he doesn't understand that he's capable of.
StartupStarter is opportunity. It's a place where you can get what you need, whether you are a kid that dropped out of high school, college. With StartupStarter, you can come and learn all the things from marketing, from finance. You can learn them at your own pace and actually become your own expert in them because we're providing you with the experts to do it. I think the pandemic really showed us a lot of, and opened our eyes to a lot of the nuances out there in the world, a lot of things that we're missing.
When the pandemic hit and suddenly business is online and you have to go find the stuff, that's when really the light bulb went up, because it's like, if everything's online and I have to navigate the whole web to figure out what I need, then you suddenly realize that why can't I go to one place? You should have just a single brand to go to that is going to take care of you, no matter what it is that you're trying to build and whatever business you're trying to create. StartupStarter is the most complete resource that we can bring to people when it comes to starting a business. It's the best-in-class education that is affordable and designed for the digital age, cinematic, and watch people that look like you, that feel like you, that are charismatic, that know their stuff, that are teaching you stuff that you actually want to know.
It's the stuff that you not only want to learn, but you need to learn. We're building the next phase of business education to make it accessible to the world.
It's been built from the ground up with people that needed help and with people that were eager and willing to help.
This started all from us saying, how can we bring people together? Because like every business is becoming an online business. How can we be a good online business to connect other online businesses in one place?
I've always loved helping people. I got into business not because I wanted to be in business, because people were asking me for help. That's what I like. And at the core, that's what brings me joy. I don't see it as work. I don't see it as business. It's just what I like to do. StartupStarter helps us do that at scale.
I love the idea of helping people while also being able to make a lot of money, writing your own ticket.
We're building it for the dreamers and for the everyday individual that just wants a better life.
Good morning. Thank you, Lorel. Oh, I can't hear you. You're still on mute.
I'm here now.
Perfect. Hey, how are you? Toby, I'm going to
Good.
turn off your camera really quick. It's great to have you here with us.
Thank you.
So welcome. We're so
Yes.
pleased to have you here this morning.
I'm excited. Yes, thank you for having me. Good to see everyone. Welcome to In a Fake Pasadena. It's great. I'm excited about Connect Week.
I am as well. I loved in that video how they talk a little bit about the courage of becoming an entrepreneur. Can you talk a little bit about your own path to becoming an entrepreneur and how that's led you to be part of StartupStarter?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it started years ago, right? I was in college, and I was working at Lowe's actually. And while working at Lowe's, I made friends in the paint department, and while taking classes and going to school full time. And I realized like, oh, let me try out painting on the walls. And I started painting stripes and started doing cool things and started helping people with decorating their walls per se. And that kind of just transformed into, for me, interior design. As you can see, and then from interior design, it turned into a full scale like designing company of my own. But I didn't really know all the tools, and I just thought it was cool that I had my own business, but I didn't really know how to make it bigger into something. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to have my own dreams and come to life. And when I moved to LA, I'm from Sacramento, California. I lived in Miami, Tallahassee, Atlanta, DC, Baltimore. I've lived a lot of different places. And when moving to LA is when in the video, my co-founder says the light bulb went off, and I got to learn a lot more about business. I always knew hey, I wanted to get money to help grow my business, but I never knew how. I never knew what a seed round was. I never knew what, any of those different terms were. And coming to LA, I worked in corporate. I've been in corporate America all my life. And while working in corporate America and coming into the tech industry and Silicon Beach of LA and all that, I started with my new job, and they were talking about, you got to learn what rounds these companies are in. They're in a pre-seed and they're in a seed round. And I'm just wait, we sell seeds too, right? And I'm just okay. So I had to like learn like what those terms were. And I think that, I mean, honestly, that was in the last 3 years that I learned that. And then working with these tech companies and understanding the different struggles that they go through, and seeing how they have to connect the dots and see how they have to raise capital and seeing all the things that they need to have a good pitch deck. They have to like have their conversation. They have to be able to talk to investors. I think that's where it really hit me. Like I've learned a lot, and how can I really turn this into something for myself? And then in my career, I've been in sales. And so sales was very much about connecting with people and networking and going to the bungalow in Santa Monica and all these different things. And after a while, it's just like, how can I make this easier? And just me and my co-founder coming together and looking at how can we make this easier for people to be able to be connected and stay connected. And then boom, the pandemic hit. So that's kind of where it all started for us. And then just my path has been just constantly just trying to find new and cool ways. I have like an idea book that I just kind of write down like all my ideas in, and then I figure out like which one am I going to do next, where am I going to go, where we'll move forward. And so it's more than just startup. I mean, we have a lot of different ideas that we're working through right now, and just in terms of what the next evolution of the company looks like.
How did you and Jose meet one another, the CEO and co-founder?
Yeah. So we both worked at our last corporate job together. We actually started our corporate job. I moved from Baltimore, Maryland, and he was already here in LA. And it's funny because we started with our corporate job in the same industry, working in tech and helping tech companies. And we started 2.5 weeks before each other. And then our bosses actually took us to dinner together. And then, we started bumping into each other because we were in two different offices. We started bumping into each other in different like networking scenes, and in Santa Monica and Venice, and, going to the different like co-working spaces. And I managed a co-working space with WeWork in his building. And then I've managed co-working spaces for the company in Pasadena and some other places as well. And then one day he called me and said, hey, like, I've been working on like trying to figure out how like we can make it easier for connecting people to the resources, the tools, and the education around just startups in general. Like all these startups have like different needs, and they're having trouble finding them. And then so I said, hey, like I'm on board. Like what do you need me to do? And so we kind of just combine forces. Like he's very analytical, and like he's drives to like do the research and all that, and I'm just like, okay, well, cool, give me the research, I'm gonna take the research, I'm gonna read it, and I'm gonna execute on it, right? And so that's kind of like just how we've been like operating since we started, like research, execution, testing, optimizing, scaling, and just nonstop. It's just been really taking off for us, and since we really officially launching the company this year, but kind of like conceptualizing it last year, and like partnering in our last company, and really utilizing some of our networks to like build it out.
You mentioned a few times about trying to make it easier for business owners. Can you talk a little bit about what democratizing entrepreneurship means to you and why it's so important today?
Well, I just was actually tapped to speak and write on an article about this as well. And we just hosted the largest equity crowdfunding conference in the world, with every major equity crowdfunding company out there. The ones that are in LA, the ones that are in Canada and the UK. But for me, it's about the resources, right? It's about the opportunities, about the tools that are available to people. And I think that what we've seen in the past is that with entrepreneurship, you either come from Silicon Valley or you went to Harvard, and like that's the idea of starting a startup, and that's the idea of how you're going to go mainstream and be looked at by everyone in terms of like what your idea is, or what your technology is, or what you're building in your startup. Whereas by democratizing entrepreneurship, what we've seen with the pandemic is that those tools are accessible to everyone, right? That by democratizing entrepreneurship, it provides access to every individual person and individual startup to be able to fulfill their dream. And by tearing back and pulling back the layers of what entrepreneurship looks like, and being able to provide people with the information, again, the tools and the resources to make their dream happen, then you're able to change the landscape and the ethos of what business as a whole looks like. And I think we have this whole idea that, oh, we have to go to school, we have to get a degree, we have to learn from school. Like, I'm a college dropout, right? I dropped out of college. I went to college for several years, and I realized like, I worked at Sam's Club and now I like sales. And so like college isn't for me, and I love college, but that didn't stop me from wanting to live the dream of having my own business or those things. But I still needed to find out, as you can see for myself, like, what is it that I need to fulfill those gaps in my life to be able to understand what business actually looks like? Because it's beyond like, looking back to 2004, 2006, it was, oh, I need to have a business plan. I need to write it out. I need to like, do all these things specific. But now it's like, wow, it's 2021. I need a pitch deck, and it needs to look this way. And so it's all about learning that. And I think that once we break those barriers down of who entrepreneurship is for, then it makes it much easier for us to just operate in a space of growth, right? And we see what's happening with that.
In helping others kind of create that growth and become educated on that process, talk a little bit about StartupStarter. There's a lot of places for people to get online education. How are you guys making it easier for individuals?
So, taking a step back into like just where we initially started as like StartupStarter and operating in that startup space, and where we've grown to now, we really seen a big shift when the pandemic hit, right? Because when the pandemic hit, it was, how are people going to stay connected? I'm stuck in my house now, but I still have to operate a business. I still want to grow. And a lot of people came into a place where they had to make a shift. They lost their jobs. They lost a lot of what their livelihood has been built on, is these 9-to-5 jobs or these corporate jobs and these salaries. And now they have an opportunity to like really build their ideas. So what we did is we connected these startups with all those resources in general by creating a Slack group. Literally, we launched our site 3 weeks later, COVID hit. Right, we went on lockdown, and so it kind of like really kind of pushed us over. Like, hey, like this is like the perfect opportunity for us to connect people and keep them connected. So like within 45 days, we took our Slack group from 0 to 500 members in our Slack group, and creating office hours and having conversations and still talking about venture capital and what's the state of venture capital now, what's the state of business right now. And then we started hosting webinars during this time, educational seminars with our partners. And what we did is we tapped all of our network and said, hey, like this is what we're creating. This is what we want to do. This is how we want to bring people together. Like, do you guys want to be a part of this? And everyone just jumped on board. Like, yes, I want to help. Like, how can we like make this bigger? And so we did VC panels. We did educational webinars around like pitch competitions and pitch perfect and all those type of things. And then later on in the summer, we decided like, hey, let's all the people that are being held back in entrepreneurship and startups from getting all the great information from accelerators, like how can we like bring those people who are not getting accepted to accelerators and like bring them into a place? So again, we tapped all of our entire network and said, hey, we want to do like an accelerator course. We broke it down into 4 different phases. We did it from September through December, and it was a free open accelerator for everyone that was left behind from or not accepted to these accelerators because they only accept a very small percentage. And so we had 2 classes every week that people were joining, and then we just realized like there's a bigger picture here of connecting the dots, and we didn't really want to compete with an accelerator. And so there was just another piece of our business that allowed us to test. And then we moved off Slack, and we actually ended up leaving our corporate jobs. We created our own actual like LinkedIn, Facebook style community specifically for startups, investors, service providers, and advisors. And again, we just built that out to where you can come and post about your company. You can come and launch your company like you would on PitchBook or any of those places. And now you have a really cool resource to connect the dots with other startups that are actually in the same position as you. And that just grew into us launching a marketplace, right? Like every startup needs the perfect tool. They need the right tool, whether it's legal services, finance, or any of those like ancillary products that you need to help grow your business and reach the next milestone. Like we brought all that into one place. So now we launched a marketplace. We put $250,000 worth of deals for our members in there, and it's all been free for people. There's going to come a point where there has to be scalability for us, where we'll have subscription model services, things like that. But this really allows us to put a stamp on what we're trying to do and how democratizing entrepreneurship looks in one place. And then we launched like our content, and we started putting cool content out. We did our first conference, industry conference, and that was on no code, right? So we did no code week back in March, and like people gravitated towards that. It was really cool because like within 3 weeks we were able to bring the entire no code space together, like all the major brands in no code, Typeform, Airtable, everyone to come speak for 2 weeks on entrepreneurship, on building your own app, on building your own company, your own brand, your own website. And actually like people got to like watch live. We talked about diversity and inclusion inside of that and what raising venture capital looks like. And then we just realized like people really liked our content, which we'll go into a little bit more. I'm sure I'll let you jump in here, but it's evolved even more since then.
Can you talk a little bit more? You mentioned diversity and inclusion. Can you talk about how that can shape your business and how it shapes your business now for others?
Wow, I mean, no, I wouldn't even put it on our business. I wouldn't even say shaping our business. I think diversity and inclusion is shaping the world, right? When you talk about D&I, like D&I is not effective unless people have a voice and have a seat at the table. And I think that's very important to us to help those people who are underrepresented, those minority communities, those people who look like us. I'm African American, Black, or however the proper term is, and my co-founder is Latinx. I'm LGBTQ. He's a veteran. Like all those different pieces are parts of what the rest of the world looks like. And whether it is in a startup or whether it is that breakdown of what the lack of capital being, dispersed into these communities, it's very important for us to recognize and try to shed light on those nuances, as you will, in the world that we live in today. And how do we make raising capital, how do we make the educational piece around raising capital more accessible to the, again, underrepresented founder, underrepresented communities, the middle America that really could use some of these skills as well. And that's where we also take a look at the wealth divide and how the impact of equity crowdfunding is having on the world and in Canada, in the US, UK, and Europe. Like it's a huge change, a huge evolution that the Jobs Act allowed to take place, and that a lot of people are not aware of, a lot of people don't know about now. And so we're just shedding light on all of those different areas. And it's funny because equity crowdfunding has now become a big piece of our business because it's all about the middle America retail investor, that individual person. We have this idea that 401k is how we live our life after working for a company after so many years, and 401k is like we're building it up, and like what does that look like for the generations to come, and what is 401k even going to be a thing? But now we have a place where with equity crowdfunding, you are able to invest in a company pre-IPO, whereas it used to be that 1% that, as I would say, the big boys club of, hey, you don't get to invest in this company until it goes public. But now, like that Jobs Act and these legislation acts that have been happening, like allow for the individual person to invest in a company pre-IPO. So we're trying to shed light on that, but it also gives the space for startups to really be able to hone in on their craft while also letting the people speak for them, right? It's all about, for us, it's about, our mission is creating opportunity for the people all the way around. And so that's what we're doing.
I love that you're empowering voices kind of across the board through education, right? Education is always the key to creating equality, and you're empowering voices of investors as well. I think that's very interesting. For you, what has been some of your challenges you've had to overcome as an entrepreneur?
For me, it's the learning, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so like I'm constantly learning. Like my co-founder is like, hey, read this book. Read this book. Like there's books that I read that just help me in my life. There's books that are help me like the Lean Startup, right? Like that's a really interesting perspective, especially if you're someone who's in corporate, right? When you read this book, you learn that like there's a reason why companies and corporations, especially the sales corporations, have so much turnover, because typically a salesperson is an entrepreneur, but they just don't recognize the type of entrepreneur that they are. And so that turnover happens when they don't get to be creative. They don't get to have a voice in like the direction that this organization is going. And so that kind of, they automatically like pull back and they go try to find another place that they can work, so that they think they're fulfilling their creative, spirit and their creative ways, but in all actuality, they're going to be suppressed again, because if your corporation is not working from a lean startup approach, then you're put into a box, and you're just constantly going down this path of not doing what you full potential allows you to.
What advice would you give to other startup entrepreneurs or people looking to start a business?
Don't be afraid. I think for me, like I grew up in and not to be, I guess, bring spirituality into this, but I grew up in a world of, I went to church. I was constantly in church. And for me, it's been a leap of faith, like in as well. The dogs. It's been a leap of faith for me of jumping out there and saying, I'm going to do it. Right. And I used to be like shy and all these different things. And I got to a place where I stopped caring like what necessarily, like there's always a place where you care what people might think about you. But I got to a place where it was, I'm not really concerned with how I look in terms of like my personality. Like that's who I am. And so like for me, it's pushing yourself to do what you want to do, jumping out there. I would have never, if I didn't have a leap of faith, I would have never jumped out there and actually went full force, leaving corporate, leaving that, that 9-to-5 corporate check that I had to just jump in. So I did that. But it's also about tapping your network. It's also about taking all of the no's that you get, and you constantly get these no's, and like, how can you turn those into yeses? And then the way that you turn those into yeses is continue to learn, and to continue to evolve, and continue to not only get the education, but educate yourself. And that's like kind of the whole entire like outlook that we take when it comes to StartupStarter.
I love it. And your leap of faith can be right now you're an inspiration, right, to so many others. So being brave and taking that leap of faith out there is really inspiring. Well done on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Christy, this is John. Is it okay if I just jump in with a real quick question?
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
And let me just remind people on the line, like if you want to ask a question, go ahead. We'll open it up for Q&A in just a few minutes. Go ahead and put that in the Q&A panel at the bottom center of your Zoom screen. Go ahead, John.
All right, thanks. Lorel, this is a very good talk, especially about entrepreneurships. And I think you've given us a lot of very good nuts and bolts as far as how StartupStarter can help entrepreneurs. But based on my background and experience, which is in finance, I've learned that being an entrepreneur is very, very risky, and it's not for everybody. So can you talk a little bit about what you think the skill sets should be for someone that wants to become an entrepreneur? You just can't be, I want to become wealthy, right? It's got to be more than that. What is it that you look for? There's some people that are cut out for it. There's some people that are not cut out for it. And I think that is probably part of your process with this company that you co-founded, to let people, it's a moment of truth. Hey, I don't know if you're right for this, or I think you got a great idea. You just have to have that perseverance and the intestinal fortitude to, see it through.
It's funny because I think that's the disconnect, right? I think the disconnect is that people often think that I'm not good enough, or I don't have the skill, right? And it's an understanding of like, you can learn, right? Again, it's like going back to, and not to say like, honestly, I could have looked at myself and said, I'm not cut out for this, right? And when I look back, like back then, I didn't know, right? But I think that there is a place for everyone. There is a place for people in corporate America, right? There's a place for people who are going to work a 9-to-5 job. There are our parents' generation, they worked until they retired from a job or an industry. I think what's changing now in the shift in the perspective of what that looks like moving forward is the new generations are all about technology, right? And there's always a gap to fill. There's always something that people are thinking about, whether you could be a nail tech that like wants to do something innovative and creating nails, or my sister, she's a barber, right? But she's now transitioned into, not only is she a barber, but she also like creates a brand for barbers and the wives of barbers, right? And I'm so proud of her. But I think that you persevere through it. Like once you decide like, hey, like I want to do this. There's been a lot of times where I've pushed back on myself, like, I don't know if this is a good idea. And then I just kind of wait a year and I didn't do certain things in terms of like other business ideas that I've had. But I think that there needs to be an open door for more people. I think that educating the masses, right, at scale, which is what we're doing here, allows for more people to realize like, I can do what I want to do. And I think that, again, the pandemic really showed us like, I have an idea, now I can make it happen. And there's every single tool out there that can allow you to have it. But like, there's also not one centralized brand that you can go to get the right information, the right education. And so that's why we're bridging that gap. So like now there should be one brand that you can go to get education, to have the network, to have the support, to have the tools that you need. And that's where what we're creating. But I think that it's just, again, answering your question, like everyone can be an entrepreneur. Everyone is a startup starter for us, right? And it's just all about pushing through. But there's a disconnect there where people don't feel like they have it. And it's not cut out for everyone. Like leaving your corporate job is not easy. Like by any means, all of this looks pretty behind me, but like it's also expensive, and you still have to think about those things. Like I have to think about like, oh, I might have to get to our next milestone, take out my 401k. I mean, because honestly, like we've bootstrapped our entire company from the time we left our corporate jobs to up until today. We're raising now, but we've made it this far by the tools, right? We've actually been able to operate on a very lean scale because of the tools that are accessible out there, and us utilizing StartupStarter ourselves. We built this on the back of us actually like, these are the tools we need. These are tools that we can use, and we've used like no code. We use all these different things, and it's helped us a lot. And you can actually run a business very inexpensive with all the tools that are out there.
And I would agree that with everything that you just said, you don't have to, graduate with a degree from a top school or anything like that these days to become an entrepreneur. You just kind of have to have a really good idea, and also the
fortitude,
the passion. I think the passion is to pursue something. But what I wanted to ask you is. And I think one of the good things about StartupStarter is that you have all the resources, and you're developing a community where you're providing the feedback to the entrepreneurs. How does somebody become a part of your, and I don't know if you call them cohorts or a member or somebody that's part of that program, so that they can get this, all this valuable information and feedback from you and your other business partners?
Yeah, so I'll kind of tell you like the where we are now and the evolution of where we're going. We recently did the 2021 Equity Crowdfunding Week, and we probably had about 1,000 registered attendees for this conference. We did it hybrid, live, and virtual, and it really opened our eyes to like it's a small industry, but it's like a lot of dollars being poured into equity crowdfunding, but then I'm riding in Ubers, I'm going here, I'm going there, and I'm realizing that a lot of people don't understand what equity crowdfunding is. And so we have a strong focus on that because it ties into our mission of democratizing entrepreneurship, and equity crowdfunding is a big piece of that, not only for the individual retail investor, which is an everyday person, right? I'm a retail investor. You guys can be retail investors. Now we're just now actually opening our community back up. We have grew our teams from the beginning of this year from the 2 of us to now 11 of us with the company. I would say first place to start is taking a look at, like, we're pushing the equity crowdfunding right now. We're opening the community back up. You can actually get early access to what's next for us. People have loved our content so much. We are now launching the first ever online business school, 4K cinematic value, very similar masterclass like, to teach everything business, right? So we'll have all the experts, we'll have all them on, and it'll be something that you can actually like sit back on your couch and watch, because it's a streaming platform, and you'll be able to stream directly through your TV, through Apple, through Roku, and actually learn business at your own pace in all the different industries that you might need help in. So that's where we are next. We're working to release a library of 100 lessons and of different curriculums and different courses. Our first one will be around equity crowdfunding and bringing in all of the major experts in that space and organizations and to talk about equity crowdfunding. But yes, please, like, go into early access, and then it allows you to be able to gain access now to our streaming platform for equity crowdfunding. As we build it out, we'll have a full launch coming in the next couple of weeks, to where that early access, you'll get memos to be able to join the community as well as the streaming platform in advance as we build it out over the next 9 to 12 months.
Can you talk a little bit about equity crowdfunding? Because you mentioned that several times, and there might be some in our audience that is not as familiar with that terminology, and how that process works when it comes to raising capital.
Yeah, absolutely. So equity crowdfunding, I'll just kind of give it back to the basics. So equity crowdfunding really allows a startup, right, or a already established organization to raise money to help reach their next milestones, or raise money for the company's growth by giving away small pieces of equity in the company pre-IPO, versus a person being able to invest after the company's gone public. So now startups can raise their first $100,000. They can raise their first $1 million from the crowd of people who believe in their product or believe in what they're launching. There's a lot of organizations out there, WeFunders, Star Engines of the world. There's Dalmore Group, which is a major sponsor for our conference. Issuance. There's different ones where you can actually raise through a platform where now you're on Start Engine or WeFunder, or you can raise through your own website as well. But it really brings in creating now that place again for middle America to be able to invest in a company. So it's all about the retail investor, right? Like, how can I make financial prosperity work for me? And there's also the startup side that says, hey, I need to raise my first $100,000. I need people that believe in the business. But then there's also that disconnect because VCs have not jumped in completely. So you have different regulations, Reg CF, and please look up these things. You can learn them during Equity Crowdfunding Week. If you go back and watch, you'll hear from all of these companies on this. So you have Reg CF, you have Reg A, and like now the legislation has changed it to where you can raise up to $75 million a year in certain instances, and you're raising it from people who believe in your product, right? And it just helps you get to your next milestone because that money is automatically accessible instead of having to go to your VC and say, hey, I need to use some of this money.
Now, you said that when you started, you bootstrapped and then you used some of your own savings and money and all that. Again, some of the
still doing it.
Still doing it. But there's some members of our audience that may not have access to that, and of course the other resources include friends and family. how challenging do you think that is when somebody has a really great idea, but they don't really have much money to put into that? One way to maybe mitigate that issue to still be able to start up a company.
Man, it's tough. It is tough for everyone, honestly. I think that for me, had the pandemic not hit the way it did, I don't think that I would have had the same opportunities I'm having now to be able to be this voice for people. But it's timing. It's timing. It's again having faith that whatever is going to happen is going to work out in the end. And faith is not the only thing you have. You got to have smarts too, right? Like, because when I made this decision, I still had to go to my bank account and say, okay, this is how this is set up. This is where this is coming from. But for someone who doesn't have those means right away to be able to do that, I think for me, it's all about taking the first step, right? And the first step is writing out that idea and figuring out what you need, right? And it's kind of like manifesting, right? You manifest into, here's what I want for my life. Here are the goals that I have. Okay, cool. Here's the first 3 steps that I'm going to take. And everyone's journey is not going to be my journey. Everyone's journey is not going to be your journey, John or Christy, because everyone's path is different, right? So like for me, it took me years. I'm 35 years old. It took me years to get to this place where I'm comfortable enough to walk away, right? But I also took little steps along the way to learn, to use products, to build out an idea, to evolve an idea. And I think that's where everyone has to start, and everyone has to evaluate their situation differently. But again, like, there's really cool tools out there that are very inexpensive, right? The amount we pay on a pair of shoes or a purse or whatever our guilty pleasures are, I think that you got to take away some of that for yourself when it comes to the next phase of your life. And especially if you want to be an entrepreneur, then you can do it. It takes planning.
Thanks, John. We're gonna wrap up our Q&A. Colin, I see you have a question. We'll address that during open networking. Lorel, anything else you'd like to share with us that our conversation has brought up for you that you'd love to share with our community before we wrap up?
I'm excited to be highlighted here. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, John. Thank you, Doreen, for having me. For me, there's a place for everyone out here. There's a place for everyone to do the things that they want to do. There are really good building blocks out here for people. I think, we really want to be that bridge. And for me, it's very important for my own ethnic background and community to understand that these things are available. And same with my co-founder. And yeah, we have some really cool things coming. I would just say continue to check in on StartupStarter. We're a startup ourselves. We're a lean startup, but we're making some huge strides. We have some amazing partnerships that we're closing right now in terms of getting in the studio. We have a 120,000 square foot studio here in LA that we're gonna be shooting all of our content in, our classes and our courses. And so yeah, stick with us and sign up for early access, because you'll benefit a lot from it.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Lorel. We appreciate everybody attending today. Our next Friday Coffee Meetup is going to be on November 5th. We're going to be speaking with Delilah Panyo on public venture capital, and if that's right for your company. So please join us again on November 5th. If you're on the Zoom meeting, stay on the Zoom meeting. We are going to transition people over to Open Network. Colin, you can ask your question there. And if you're on the LinkedIn Live, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We've really appreciated it. Okay, take care, everyone.